Okay, so what we're going to cover in this video is just a brief overview of the changes that we've made to the door hinges and how that all relates to the chassis, how it affects the alignment of the doors, and the labor involved in trying to align the doors. So this is the design that we have in the first run of Rally Fighters for the lower gusset, and it would go somewhere around this area here, and you can see it's got an arm to kind of stabilize the point where the hinge arm would bolt to, which is right here. So this hinge arm would bolt here, and then this pivots and swings like that, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 carriage bolts that would bolt it to the chassis, and all of this is inside the wheel well. So what you would have to do is reach inside the wheel well, which is pretty far back. The front lip of the wheel well is probably somewhere around this area here, so about a good foot, maybe 14 inches in front of where the component bolts on. So you can imagine it's pretty difficult to get in there, even though we've used the carriage bolts originally, which means you only have to access one side of the bolt because it's held in by the square hole that we had cut into the bracket here. So all you would have to do is tighten down the nut side. But the other thing about this design is you can see it's just a small piece with just this one small arm to stabilize a big long door, of the Rally Fighter. So when you open the door, you may have noticed that when the door opens, from all the weight of the door and the length of the door, that it wants to kind of droop down because this isn't as stable as it could be. So what we wanted to do was look at that design to be able to first stabilize the door so that it doesn't want to twist due to its own weight, and then also we wanted to make it easier to bolt on the components that hold the hinges for the doors, and then also make the necessary adjustments to the doors, so the in and out movement of the door, the fore and aft movement of the door, and then maybe if we had to roll the door in and out to make it line up with the rest of the body. So what we did again was we did away with this piece and replaced it with this one here, which is a bolt-on piece. So obviously you can see if I kind of hold it up, the difference in size. This is a 3/16 thick steel plate with a flange here on the edge to prevent it from flexing. You've got the gusset on the bottom here that bolts to the chassis. Again, we use the carriage bolt to make it easier to bolt up. And then the same thing on the top here, another flange that gussets its forward motion so that it doesn't want to flex forward and it can't pull in and out, again, due to the weight of the door. You can also see that we've got it bolted here to the chassis with these couple of tabs here and here, and then the hinge mount plate would mount here. I'll grab that. So this would bolt here, and then there's your in and out motion, which you can get from inside the door before the door panel goes on. You can see we've also cut a hole in it here to lighten it up a little bit, but it's still very rigid due to the flange on the outside here, and then the bottom and top gussets bolting forward to that gusset. So what we found was, even with this design that's a lot more rigid than the original, and the places where the adjustment takes place are accessed a lot easier than originally, what we found was that when we put the body on, you can see we've got it kind of rotated out of position right now. When we did bring the body back down and over the chassis, we found out that it is going to be possible with this new design to have these pieces welded onto the car rather than a bolt-on. So these pieces here were a little bit easier to bolt on than the previous design. Again, you're reaching in the wheel well and only have to access the one side of the bolt because it's a carriage bolt. But it was still kind of difficult to reach in there and access the bolt, to set the carriage bolt in, and then to put the nut on, whether it be the 2 tabs in the back here or the gussets on the top or the bottom. So when we did our trial fit of the body and we saw that it was going to be possible to have this piece be a weld-on, we went another step forward, changed the design a little bit, and basically eliminated this bottom bracket here, this upper bracket, and then the 2 brackets in the back that this whole plate would normally bolt to. So the 4 bolting points have been replaced by a weld, which is much easier to locate and more accurate to locate in the jig when the chassis is being fabricated. So what we've done in the second here, we'll go over to the other side. We've got that welded mount shown to show the next step of the hinge component. So we'll head over there now. Okay, so you can see same basic design. We've got the pieces that will accept the actual hinge arms bolted up here to show how those bolt on, and then again you've got your in and out adjustment here rather than having the adjustment on the door frame itself. And what that meant is if you had to adjust the door after you bolted it up, in or out, or if you had to kind of roll the door, the bottom edge in or the top edge in on the door, you would have to take the door all the way off and then move the door about the frame inside the door. So what we've done is we've eliminated some of that complexity by adding the adjustment here so that you can access that while the door is still bolted up. So again, same basic design here. You can see it's got the plate with the flange on the outside, the hole in the middle. Again, this hole was for making it a little bit lighter, as well as to be able to reach your hand in and access the bolt. Previously, you can see we still have the tabs here. So what we'll do is we're going to cut these tabs off. This piece will get welded to the upright here on the dash bulkhead, and then you can see up here we've got this piece that kind of gussets this off, and then it will weld to the tube here on the chassis, and then the same thing on the bottom. You can see we still have the tab here that we use just to locate this plate. So now that we have it located and welded on the top, we can take this tab off, take the bolt out, take the tab off, and then weld this bottom piece to the chassis itself. And then that's what the design will end up looking like. One other thing that allowed us to do that was changing the design of the latch plate. So before, what the body did was it came in from the front and down over the chassis, because what it had to do is you had to kind of spread the body here around that large component, the large brackets that we had previously on the side, to be able to get it around and kind of curl under and then butt up against one of the old hinge plates which we had coming off of the chassis here. So it would basically kind of stick out like that, so it wouldn't allow you to come over the back and then down in the front. So what we did is we added this boxed structure here, and then there'll be a bolt-on plate that comes off and kind of mimics that old design. So it'll have a arm that comes out, and then the latch will bolt in that same position where it latched before. We've just got two bolts in there right now holding the plate on the backside. So what we'll do now is we have more adjustment, easier adjustment of the latch and the hinges by changing that design. Whereas before, with that fixed plate that's welded to the chassis, we would have had to grind out the slots either in and out or up and down to be able to get the latch in the right location and have the door shut the way that it should without being too low or too high. So now what we can do is we have full adjustment in the back here to be able to do that without grinding. And again, up in the front we have full adjustment of the door and a much more rigid design to hold the hinges. One other thing too to note is a change that we made to the actual arm. So this is the old arm with the pivot point, and then this is where the stops were for the detent, so the door has a couple of locations where it would stop. Again, due to the weight of the door and some of the flex in the hinges, we found that the detents in the hinge arm that didn't really work very well. So the door would kind of just go right past that point and swing all the way open. So there was nothing limiting it. And then also what you can see is some of that flex in the door is due to how long this arm is and the angle of the bend here, and then the distance between the center point of the pivot and the bend in the arm. So what we've done is we've changed the thickness. You can see the difference there. Changed the thickness of the plate itself. We've changed the angle at which it's bent, and then we changed the length of the arm as well. And you can see there's a big difference there in just the thickness alone, but changing those couple characteristics of the bend and the length of the arm are going to make the door a lot more rigid. We also have the improvement to the door frame, where we've added structure into the door frame. Before it was basically just a top bar and a bottom bar with nothing in between, and we've maintained those two bars and then just added some structure in the center point of it in the form of some 1/16 inch thick steel with, again, some holes in it to lighten it up, also to be able to access the track bolts. So the frame itself will also be a lot more rigid.